I know for me, there are some friends in my 20s who I noticed when I would leave their presence, I particularly felt dysregulated or irritable or sad or angry. And I couldn't even really identify why. Like, it wasn't something specific they said to me that was mean. I just never felt good after I left their presence. And it was very challenging because, when we have these long histories with people, to distance ourselves without having like a concrete reason why,
Mhm.
right? But that there's a few friendships like that I have completely like cut off from my life. Hello, I am Dr. Eleni Boosalis,
I'm Dr. Lauren Fisher.
and today we're talking about how to protect your energy in this world of chaos, especially if you're feeling really depleted lately. So let's just jump right in.
Yeah, I love talking about this topic because I think most people can relate to being impacted by the people or the environment that they're in. Like, do you ever go to a party and it's super fun and the vibe feels good and you're like, yeah, energetic and dancing, or even walk into a room and it's like, oh my God, low vibration. And we say that, like, sometimes people think energy is woo, but actually when it comes down to science, our body is made of electrical impulses. So we just want to talk about that a little bit and then move into why we feel, why we're sensitive to input and output and how we can manage our energy.
Yeah, I mean, and we hear people talking about, oh, that person is toxic, or I feel depleted when I see them, or oh, I feel so energized when I'm around that person. So there is actually science behind this. And so we want to kind of like demystify it and de-woo-woo it so that you can understand that it's not your imagination and that there is actually energy around you that you're picking up on or getting depleted by. So, what do we start with? Some science, maybe, that we're made up of electricity. We're made up of energy. Hmm.
Heart runs on and brain runs on electrical impulses, heart rate variability. Every thought requires energy. Every emotion creates physiological changes in our body. Like, that's where you feel signature energy and body-based feelings. Like, when you have anxiety, right? You might feel tense or feel a certain way. So I think what's neat is the experiment with the rice. Would you like to share that?
Yeah, so this is one of I love this guy, this Japanese researcher, Masaru Emoto. He's done different studies where they look at energy, the energy of words specifically,
Mm-hmm.
because as we were talking about, that there is an electrical energy that is measurable, that's coming off of your body from your heart and your mind, your brain as well. And there are also words that have a higher frequency of energy that is measurable and a lower frequency of energy that is also measurable. And so if you are engaging in high frequency words and thoughts and actions, like that are in love, gratitude, peace, compassion, there is actually a higher frequency of energy coming from your body. And if you engage in a lower, there's a lower. So what he did is he had these 3 jars of cooked rice. He also did this with water. He replicated this with water. One was labeled with a positive word, or people would look at it with positive, loving words and loving regard. Another one received hateful words, and another one was just completely ignored.
This was rice.
This is
the
rice.
The rice one. There's a water one too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what they find after, again, one had positive, one had negative, and the other was neutral. What did they find?
The loved rice preserved longer, the hated rice deteriorated, and the ignored rice deteriorated even faster than the rice that was hated. And this is actually apparent with children too, that we have found with abuse, that the children who are ignored and neglected actually turn out having worse mental health outcomes than the ones that are abused. So there's this like being ignored as well, like not being considered energetically. So with the water, the way he did it is he had water bottles and then he labeled them with different words and also thought of them in these ways, positive, negative, or neutral. And the water crystals, after so many weeks, he put under the microscope, and the ones with the positive words were perfectly symmetrical and beautiful, and the ones that were negative were really deformed and deteriorating. And so his whole theory is that if we are made up of water, mostly water, right, our bodies, what are we doing with our thoughts, words, and actions, and who are we surrounding ourselves with that are impacting our energy? It's like the simple way of putting it.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty wild when you think about it, but it just really proves the physics and the impact. And so, while we're going to talk mostly about external energy, like someone once said to me, like the words and emotions that you feel within is like the house that you live in. And is your house bright, airy, and full of love, or is it like dark, dingy, and like scary? And when you said before about the low frequency emotions, so some of the lowest that we can have is shame, guilt, fear. And those feel very different. But let's talk about moving into a little bit about theory, physiological, and attachment theory, and things of that nature.
Yeah, so there's so many different studies, and they would do a lot of these studies in the 80s and the 70s when we weren't so much bound by ethics. We can't do these studies now, but there are different research. Like there's a social baseline theory where the human brain is shown to have evolved to expect support from others. So in a healthy relationship, the brain perceives uh, that there's less threat, there's less effort to stay stable, and these people have perception that difficult tasks are easier when they're supported by others around them. There's also a famous study where holding the hand of someone, a trusted individual, reduces the activation of threat in your brain, the processing part of your brain. So we are energized when we are around people that we perceive to be supportive. This is a biological and neurological response in our brain. And we are the opposite when we are feeling threatened, because the fight or flight system, or the negativity bias, where we're looking for threat around us, comes up when we're feeling that we're not supported by people around us.
Yeah, so like taking it practically, let's say you've got a scary medical procedure. You're already feeling anxious, right? That's a normal reaction. You're not sure what to expect. You're nervous. Like, you're like, who am I going to take with me? Who will drive me and who will pick me up? Are you selecting someone who has a calm demeanor, who's going to be able to help soothe your system? Or are you picking someone who's like, oh my God, are we going to be late? Da, 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 da. Like, is all anxious and queued up, right? Like, that is going to amp up your nervous system. So, I think to that point of, again, a task that's difficult or hard or scary or whatever it may be, like really choosing like who is it that you want in that room with you to support you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then there's also this co-regulation that happens with people. There's something called mirror neuron, where we will actually be affected. There's an emotional contagion, some people call it, where when you're around someone who's dysregulated, your brain will mirror that and become dysregulated. So you see this with babies. They did a lot of experiments like this. You can look these up on YouTube, the older ones, where you look at a baby and then they will mirror what you're experiencing. If you smile, they smile. If you cry or frown, they frown. If you ignore them, they really freak out. So there's this like biological mirroring thing that's happening. So going back to your surgery, like if you're going into surgery or something stressful like that, you don't want someone around you who's dysregulated. You want someone who's grounded and calm and is inducing that calm in you. Definitely contagious.
Yeah, and I think you can practice. Every time you smile, most people will return that with a smile. It's almost like an unconscious automatic, like mirroring. Can even break down the curmudgeon sometimes as well.
Yeah. You're like forcing them to mirror you. Yeah.
Yeah, but this is important because our nervous systems are kind of wired unconsciously to always be like assessing whether we're safe or not, which is why like you might be more sensitive when you walk into a room, or we get attuned to people's emotions, energetic frequency, just the vibe in the room, if you will. So like, our systems will start giving us feedback. That's why our body's important to be able to tune to, because it's like, is it safe? Can I relax, or do I need to stand on guard?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so when you're noticing that and you're aware of what's happening in your body, then you can actually try to co-regulate with the other person. This happens in therapy. We did a podcast on going to therapy, and this is another thing that happens in therapy that's relating to what we're talking about today. If a client is in our room and they're completely dysregulated, one of the things that we can do as therapists, and you can do this in real life, is make sure that you're grounded, you're noticing your breath, you're noticing your body, you're noticing just how calm and slow and peaceful you're talking to the person. And oftentimes the client will co-regulate with you. So in a way, like you're taking them on your ride instead of them taking you on their ride. And so this is like a really great technique, not just in the therapy room, but in real life that you can practice. Just notice that.
Totally. And I think people struggle with this because if a loved one is feeling a certain way, they're getting anxious with them, like they're mirroring. But if you're able to stay calm, like you said, you can really impact others' energies. It's super cool to kind of play with.
Yeah.
Honestly. On a fun note here, if you take a pause and we're looking at like doing a people audit in your life, I want you to think about the people that energize you, the people that drain you, and the people that depend on you. Who gets most of your time? I mean, I find that people often are not really analyzing who they're spending time with. Didn't you mention the other day that there's something about the 6 people you spend the most amount of time with are the most influential on your life?
Yeah. And I can't remember who said that. It might have been Winston Churchill or something like that, but that you are basically a sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with energetically, that it impacts you. Yeah. So it's really important. We don't realize that becomes our norm, right? And then we are all constantly co-regulating with each other. But if you're co-regulating with a cohort whose stress level is up here, that becomes your norm. If you're co-regulating with a cohort that's stress level is down here and they're in a calm, relaxed state, that will become your norm. So like being mindful of that. We were talking about friendships as well and how we kind of grow out of friendships. I know for me, there are some friends in my 20s who I noticed when I would leave their presence, I particularly felt dysregulated or irritable or sad or angry. And I couldn't even really identify why. Like it wasn't something specific they said to me that was mean. I just never felt good after I left their presence. And it was very challenging because, when we have these long histories with people, to distance ourselves without having like a concrete reason why, right? But that there's a few friendships like that I have completely like cut off from my life.
Yeah, and I think in pop culture, you hear a lot about energy vampires. And we talk about like toxic people, like what's toxic, what's dysregulated. And I think they're like, in my opinion, right, and with a compassionate standpoint, if you are exhibiting negative behaviors, emotions, or you're dysregulated, right, there's something not in alignment. So we have compassion. However, when we think about our own well-being, which we have to, especially at various times, because we only have so much energy to output each day, I think that you talk a lot about dysregulated people that could be angry or screaming, right? But then you can also talk about toxic people that are choosing to do behaviors that are in alignment with your values, right? Like they're mean or they're insulting or they're gossiping or they're engaged in something that just doesn't resonate with you.
Yeah.
And yeah, normally you are leaving that feeling like, ugh, gross, And so something just to pay attention to like who you're with. And again, if you're with someone who's a wonderful person, most of the time they're having a variation in their life because they're going through something, you want to hold that space. But if there's something where you see someone's not open to feedback or you're just like, hey, I've outgrown this, it's okay to say goodbye, because I think it's not just protecting your energy, it's also optimizing your energy. Because when we are around people that are positive or maybe help us to be curious about the world, or who are operating in love, to me, like that makes me feel warm, expansive. My mind is like, starting to bend in different ways. And those are the type of people I generally want to hang out with.
Yeah. Well, I think what you're talking about too is when you're around these people, your brain is not on high alert, right? Your brain is saying, I'm safe and I'm held. And my brain doesn't have to be working overtime to subconsciously, right? This is all subconscious to be looking for danger.
Yeah.
When you're around people who are in a subconscious way, right? Not even overtly a threat in some way. Maybe they're jealous, maybe they're negative, maybe they're angry, even if they're not directing it at you. Our brain is naturally trying to protect us to be on high alert. And we're on high alert, we're in fight or flight, and then we're depleted. That's why sometimes you feel so depleted, but you're like, I don't know why. I don't know what just happened. So like think about that with certain people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that's such a great point. I mean, I think that also too, while we're talking about like people, like, I mean, in today's day and age, many people are reporting to us or experiencing just sort of like the weight of the world, the issues that are happening, different personalities, the conflicts that are around us. So like, there is a lot more, being on alert, if you will. And so we're going to move into in just a little bit about how to like conserve and save your energy, because there's some things that we can't control. Sometimes we can eliminate people from our lives and say goodbye, and that is the easy fix. But there's also times where we have to be existing within a working environment, a family, or society where there are things that are, let's say, the frequency behaviors happening. And so it then does go to like, yeah, how do we take care of ourselves and stay as healthy and whole as we can? Overall, you want to optimize your well-being, right? The healthier you are, the healthier people are around you. So you could be the person of light and high frequency. And I hope you are. All right. I think that's a wrap. All right. What do you think?
I think that's it.
Okay.
Shut this energy down.
Yeah.
All right.
See you later. Bye.